Hello, isn't it a glorious day again? We did a Twitter survey recently and we asked people what would you like to see videos on, and the most popular subject was garden design. So welcome to our garden. I'm not going to try and tell you today what your garden should look like. What I am going to try and cover is a few of the principles that we looked at when we laid out this garden. I am going to show you just what we started from, because if you look at this you might think, oh well, aren't they lucky because they started from a nice clean garden. Trust me, it wasn't like that when we started. And if we can do it, you can do it. So all we're going to do today is have a look around, talk about some of the guiding things that we think will make your life easier in your garden. Let's not chat for too long, let's go and have a look. This is what the garden looked like when we took on the property. You can't really tell the size of the weeds, so I'll show you another photograph in a moment. But those buttercup were above waist height. This might give you a better idea. We had to cut our way in with a brush cutter just to see the land. We were sinking into our ankles in wetness, and the land was in an appalling condition. Thankfully, we have good neighbours, and one turned up with a huge John Deere and a 6-foot flail cutter, which made much shorter work of that undergrowth than my brush cutter was ever going to, and reduced it all down to manageable lengths. Once I'd cut back the trees a bit, my great friend engineer Dave turned up with his fantastic old vintage tractor, and instead of me putting branches one at a time onto a bonfire, he was picking them up in 4-foot sections, dumping them on the bonfire, and then opening a bottle of beer for us both to share while it burned down a little bit, which made overall a much more civilised way of getting rid of a lot of the brush. I wish I could tell you that was the end of the story, but of course it wasn't. The land was still incredibly wet, ridiculously so. You would sink into your ankles. We soon found some of the problems. The old septic tank had collapsed, and the ground was running with, well, put it nicely, effluent, to put it accurately, human sewage. And so we had to dig out the entire septic tank arrangement and replace it. The ground still wasn't right because the water had nowhere to go. We're at sea level here in Lincolnshire. So field drains had to be put in to drain the water away into the dike system. I'm only showing you this to explain that if you have a desire to build a garden, you can build a garden. These things are never simple, but you can overcome any issue that is thrown at you. So don't be scared to take on a project. That's probably enough of where we came from. Let's have a look at how we laid out the garden when we fixed the structural issues. This and these are the standard layout of the vegetable beds in our veg garden. They are semi-raised beds, they're 4 foot wide by 25 foot long, and they have those dimensions for a reason. 4 foot wide because a 2 foot stretch means I can comfortably hand weed in amongst produce from either side of the bed and get to the middle. 25 foot long is much longer than that, and I'll get lazy and walk across the bed compacting the soil instead of walking round the end to get to the other side. They're actually not 4 foot by 25 foot. They're 1.2 metres by 7.2 metres, and there's a reason for that. These boards come in 3.6 and 2.4 metre lengths. So 7.2 metres long is 2 complete boards. A 1.2 metre end panel is either a third of a long board or half of a short board. There's no waste. So whilst I had some guiding overall principles, what I wanted to do is make sure that I made the best use of the materials we bought to construct the beds. You'll also notice some clips, and one of the reasons we have these semi-raised beds is the ability to put covers, standard covers on standard beds, and we can move those covers from bed to bed to bed. And I'll show you roughly how those work in just a moment. This is one of the standardised covers that we've built for our standardised beds. Design is very simple. You 2 sets of what look like wooden goalposts. That's basically what they are, just tannalised 2x2. With hoops over it, made of scrap 20mm conduit, and clipped along the bottom offcuts the 20mm water pipe. And what that means is we can put any cover on that frame that we choose. This is bird netting. It lets insects in to pollinate the strawberries, it keeps birds off from stealing the berries. We have finer mesh. If we want to grow brassicas in there, cabbages, we can grow brassicas in there, and with a fine mesh on, keeps all the butterflies off them. If we want to grow peas, we can have a wide net that just keeps pigeons off. We can even put whole plastic covers on, turn this entire thing into a mini polytunnel for early propagation. When we want to get in and weed, you just lift the side up and weed. It's very simple. Or harvest your strawberries or whatever you need. And the ends are just clipped in place with little clamps. Take a look at this compass. This shows you probably the most important principle I'm going to talk about today. It shows that our beds are oriented from south to north. And there's a reason for that. Take a look at my shadow behind me. If my beds were oriented east to west, and I was a tall vegetable, not a great leap to think of me like that, I would be shading out every other bed that was behind me. Because they're south to north, they only shade themselves. So if you can keep long thin beds oriented with one end towards the south, they won't shade each other out. Another key point is look behind me at that fruit cage. That fruit cage in 2 months will be almost a solid wall of foliage. There'll be loganberries and blackberries and raspberries just making a mass of foliage, quite high, like 8 foot high. If that was on the south side of the garden, it would throw a massive shadow across all the other growing areas. So tall things like fruit cages, like sheds, like barns should, if possible, be on the north side of your growing area, because on the south side they will shade out a lot of the garden. One of the things we thought was important was not just to measure our beds, it's to measure our parts. We've got big barrows, rotavators, big mowers, all sorts of tools that we need to be able to get anywhere in the garden. And we don't want getting them there to be an absolute pain. So it's very important to consider that your paths are wide enough, plus a little bit of wiggle room beyond your widest tool, and that you've got plenty of room at the corners to turn the corners so that your mower's not bumping into another bed that's just beyond where this bed is. So give that a good thought. Look at the turning circle of your tools and make sure that it's pleasurable and easy to get your tools where you need them to be in the garden. Now, I've said that the north side of the garden is a problem because it gets a lot of shade, a lot of sheltered out areas, and it is a problem for growing peas in. It's ideal for chickens. They like shelter from strong sun, they like a windless environment. So what we can consider actually in our garden design is areas that are less suitable for one thing are more suitable for another. And if we keep our vegetables on the south, we can keep things like chickens on the north, and they're very, very happy. We're looking down from east to west, and at the west end of this is our orchard. Well, again, I don't want to be digging around the roots of the fruit trees and damaging those roots, but perfect. So our chickens are on the north side of the vegetable growing area where there's a lot of shade, and in amongst the apple and pear and plum trees where we don't want to be damaging the soil. So what we're trying to do in our small plot is make the most of the characteristics of the land so that we can make all of it, or as much of it as possible, productive. What I'm trying to show you here is it's quite windy today. I'm showing you the trees moving in the wind. And if we then come down to this area, when we moved in, what you can see now is this hedge was in fact a barbed wire and concrete post fence. This side, as you can see, we're in a corner here, was post and rail. In Lincolnshire, the first set of mountains you'll hit if you travel east, which is the direction the wind comes from, is in Russia. The wind fairly howls around here. So in order to protect our crops, we needed a windbreak. And you can see that you can see through this hedgerow that we've planted. It's not solid, it's native English hedging, and it will thicken as it matures. But it breaks the wind up. It acts like a sieve for the wind and turns it into much smaller pieces. And where we're sat is remarkably calm, but it didn't used to be. So one of the things I would encourage you to think about when designing your garden is, do you have strong winds? If so, what direction do they come from? And what planting can you do to break that wind up and protect your crops? This is the northwest corner of our little plot. And here we have a bonfire site to get rid of woody brash, cabbage stalks, tree stumps, etc. And if we pan right, we have a composting area, and that composting area allows us to have, at the moment, 15 Dalek type composters, and those we rotate the green and brown material through fairly fast, maintain a good rot, produce our own potting compost. We also in there store things like, at the moment you can see a big pile of wood chip that a friendly neighbourhood tree surgeon has given us. And if we look a little bit more to the right, you'll see the gate he comes in. So access is important to these types of areas, but you do need to think about where you're going to compost, where you're going to burn, where you're going to store manure, where you're going to store wood chip and other mulches you might want to use. And for me, putting that in a corner that isn't in a prime sunny position is very useful. You also need to think about, where's your water coming from? Now we have a rainwater harvesting system, and if people are interested in that, I'm very happy to show it, but we can basically pump that up to mains pressure and use that for irrigating our veg. And we don't use nice clean drinking water, we use rainwater for that. And that sounds, oh, I might have a couple of water butts. We have 34,000 litres of harvested rainwater. Happy to show you how that works. If that's of interest, let us know in the comments. But do think about your utility areas, because they're very important in a proper working garden. Today was just showing you some of the things that we thought about when we chose the layout of this garden. Clearly scratching the surface of the subject, and we're absolutely not trying to tell anyone, copy exactly the way we did it. We just think it might be helpful if we explain a few of the principles that we tried to apply when we designed our garden. If this sort of thing is helpful, please give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment and tell us, what else would you like to see? Do you want to know how we built these frames? Do you want to know how we fertilise our garden? Do you want to know the principles that we use for crop rotation? Anything like that, happy to cover it. Just tell us what it is. And please, if you're not already a subscriber, click the subscribe button down below and hit the bell icon, and you'll hear every single time we load a new video. It's a beautiful day. I hope you enjoy it as much as we are. We'll talk soon.